question for you. When is a 2023 movie not a 2023 movie? The answer, The Devil Beneath. So, yes, The Devil Beneath, a air quotes 2023 movie directed by and written by Luke Spark, who directed the Operation Rainfall kind of series of movies. So why do I say this? Because this is actually a 2016 movie called Red Billabong, repackaged, renamed and redistributed as a new movie, Devil Beneath. So, there you go. This is not a 2023 movie, originally at least. It's a 2016 movie called Red Billabong. So, there you have it. So, what is Red Billabong, aka Devil Beneath, all about? Well, it's a kind of a monster on the loose, kind of cryptid movie. It's actually an Australian film, and it focuses on the legend of the Bunyip. Oh yes. Now, the story focuses on two estranged brothers whose grandfather has died, and they're all that's left of the family ultimately. And their grandfather owned quite a lot of land, and his kind of last will and testament is to give it back to the Aboriginal people. And at the same time, there seems to be some type of creature howling in the kind of the forest areas. Now we learn that the brothers are not exactly seeing eye to eye on what to do with this kind of this land exactly. And as it turns out, a group of kind of friends turn up for a kind of a weekend away, and it just so happens this kind of howling in the woods belongs to this kind of Bunyip, this kind of large reptilian sort of style creature that, you know, isn't particularly friendly, you might say. And not only that, we have a kind of human antagonistic force as well to deal with. What'll happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss what I think works. This is kind of a cryptid action comedy horror to a large degree. It's kind of played straight, but there are some kind of like, you know, some funnier moments in it, some kind of a few kind of gags, some kind of comedy kind of characters and things like this. The movie has a relatively kind of light tone as it kind of sort of goes through. What can I say that works? I think that kind of tone is quite an enjoyable tone. It certainly feels somewhat kind of like B-movie and kind of schlocky. But at the same time, I think Luke Spark, who wrote and directed this, judging by what I've seen of his work, the Operation Rainfall and that kind of the other film that was related to that, you know, he has these big ambitions and stuff, and that's certainly true of this movie. But it's kind of this one plays more like a bit of a schlocky film to some degree, but it has an element of fun, and I thought the characters had a good kind of like banter between them. I quite enjoyed their kind of interactions. The two brothers are estranged, but they're not like particularly kind of at each other's throat. It's just kind of like somewhat of a kind of uncomfortable situation sometimes, but they do act like brothers, I sort of quite liked. And even the kind of like the friends that turn up, I mean, one's like the typical douchey guy, the other one's just kind of like, you know, sort of beta male, then we get a few kind of girls as well. You know, I still quite enjoyed all the kind of the characters, to be honest, albeit they're a little bit kind of broad in regards to their sort of characterization, but I still thought they were quite fun. I mean, the movie setup is pretty strong, I've got to say. You know, even though it's not exactly, you would call ideal sense in regards to kind of storytelling, and the things here don't make some sense, but I still kind of quite enjoy, you know, we have this kind of, this creature howling. It sounds like massive. It sounds like it's a T-Rex, and we kind of see the kind of the trees swaying or anything. Blimey, well, no, what's this? So it has this kind of quite sort of good setup that there's something clearly kind of like big and kind of dangerous, kind of lurking out in the kind of the undergrowth and the forest and everything, which is, I thought, was, you know, quite an exciting kind of setup for the film. And, you know, we learn that the grandfather is a cryptozoologist, and that's obviously what he was kind of looking at and things like that. So the story progression, I would say, for the first half, maybe even first 2/3 of the movie, I think is relatively kind of strong. We do see, you know, obviously this kind of Bunyip in all its glory, particularly as you'd expect towards the end of the movie. It's a mixed bag. I'll come on to the bad in a minute, but there are a couple of sequences where I do think it works. The first time we really kind of see it is we have a kind of a group of mercenaries and stuff which turn up, and they're ultimately there for cannon fodder, but I'm going to come on to them again in a minute as well. And we sort of see this thing attacking them and picking up, you know, people from vehicles and stuff. And that sequence, I would say, is the effects work on that sequence is relatively strong. The CGI is kind of a little bit more in kind of shadow, so I think it kind of just looks a little bit better. Some of the kind of the set pieces where people are kind of getting the, you know, ripped out their kind of like jeeps and stuff was done pretty good. So there are some kind of set pieces and there are some effects what I do think works pretty well. The movie is ambitious, I will give it that. It tries to have a great many things kind of factor into this, and it tries to have a very much a kind of a down-to-earth kind of protagonist who I thought was quite a likeable kind of character, to be honest. So you know, it has the makings there for a kind of almost like an action adventure film to a certain degree, but with obviously man-eating monster horror kind of twist in it. What didn't work for me? So let's just come back to some of the kind of things that I've said here. Now the CGI, you know, it's an ambitious movie, and there are some elements where I think the CGI works, but essentially when we get into this cave system, there's a sequence towards the end of the movie, it looks really poor. Unfortunately, the Bunyip kind of design, it kind of looks like a video game character transported into a live action movie, and the animation is quite poor as well. The way it moves around, it seems vastly different. The animation in that sequence seems so different to what I think was a better animated sequence in the with all the kind of the mercenaries kind of attacking and things like that. The design of this creature is still kind of cool looking. I have to say, it kind of looks like a huge kind of troll from the the Lord of the Rings, but almost a little bit more kind of like reptilian. I thought it looked pretty good, but it's just not particularly well rendered and well animated, unfortunately. And there's quite, I've got to be honest with you, an embarrassing sequence towards the end, which is meant to be this big climax, this big fight between a character and this kind of Bunyip. It looks pretty bad. So there's that. Other things, okay, the mercenaries. This movie's ambition, I think, is part of the problem here. Luke Spark, I said, he's directed this kind of like alien invasion couple of films, and you know, big ambition, but maybe a little bit stretched beyond his means, to be honest. And I think it's true in this one, because we have these kind of this subplot that takes up quite a lot of time in the third act about this human antagonist. Is all I'm going to say. And we get all these kind of mercenaries turn up, and I'm thinking, I don't really understand what they're here for. You know, what are they? What's their actual goal here? What is their actual MO? Oh, we're trying to get money from getting at this monster, and I'm like, oh, I don't. It's so poorly kind of put together and stuff like this. And then we have within that we have a kind of a personal relationship with a character through our group of, you know, with our group of protagonists. Again, it's so poorly handled. But unfortunately, you know, it's not just in the kind of that sort of final act. Even if we take something a little bit more subtle, you know, it just seems to be completely nonsensical, this movie, in a lot of ways. For example, we have our two brothers at the beginning of the movie, and they first hear this creature, and it's clearly, I mean, it sounds like a T-Rex. You would not think it was some little animal. And we see the trees kind of sway, and they're like, oh, let's get back in the house, and then they kind of just forget all about it. It's like, come on. Even in I mean, I know Australians have this kind of reputation for being like, whatever. But you know, it was like, come on. Come on. Yeah, it was just, this movie, unfortunately, you can't really take the characters or the things that happen in this movie too seriously, because it just is a little bit nonsensical. And then it folds in all these other kind of like plot elements here, where these kind of land developers and estranged kind of father figure, these Aborigine people, the actual legend of the Bunyip, which seems to somehow control these women, but we don't really know why. And it's just all these things that are added in and thinking it just doesn't make any sense. The acting is a mixed bag as well. There are some kind of pretty hammy performances here. It's not everyone, and I'm pleased to say it's not our main two kind of brothers. I thought they actually did a pretty good job. And even some of the friends I thought did an okay job. But there are a couple of clunkers here in some of the kind of the smaller roles. So, you know, it's a bit of a dumb film. Let me just put it like that. If I have to nutshell it, it's a dumb but somewhat kind of fun movie. You know, I'm hard pressed to say this movie is good, if I'm being completely honest with you. I did have some enjoyment watching it, but I can't honestly say this is a good film. So I'll give it a 5 out of 10, a kind of an average film. It is kind of fun, but this is one film when you genuinely have to kind of leave your brain at the door and don't be expecting anything too kind of like polished either. Yeah, but it's a watchable film if you don't mind, you know, some silliness and films not really making a hell of a lot of sense. Have you seen it? Either the 2016 version or the 2023 version? Please do let me know, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time, and bye for now.